your two hosts, Carlos and Dylan.
What's up, guys? We're back for a special episode to talk about Florida Chaos and all the movement that John Summerall and his current staff have been doing. How you doing, Dylan? Nice to see you back after the holidays.
It's
Happy
good
New
to be
Year
back.
to you and the wife.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Long time no see. It's good to be back, and let's get some talking.
Do you think they're done with the wide receiver room, or can we expect at least one or two more?
I wouldn't say for sure that they're done. I think that, if they were to be done, it would be good enough. I think we have a really good wide receiver room. I do know that they were pursuing Jamie French, the former 5-star, heavily when he did commit to Michigan. That might have been more of one of those ads where it's like you don't need him, but you would like him, want him. So I think that the wide receiver room is not something to worry about right now. It's a really good room. They've done an incredible job, probably one of the best rooms on the team heading into the year. So I wouldn't say they're done because you never know. A guy might pop. I mean, we saw it last night. Jordan Seaton, one of the best, offensive linemen in the country, popped out of nowhere. I don't think anyone expected that. So if a receiver does pop that Florida feels like they could go out and get, I'm sure they would, do their all to do that. But I think as of now, they're probably just kind of in that, they're not going to be as aggressive as they were because they've added enough pieces where that room looks really good on paper.
Now that you spoke of the O-line, there's an O-line. Well, he's no longer out there anymore, but I wanted him to go after the redshirt freshman from Georgia Tech. Peyton is the last name. I can't recall the first name right now. And I was told by one of the followers of the channel, or at least he peeped in a video, that he went to Oklahoma. I would have wanted Peyton to be a Gator because he originally was a Gator commit. Then he flipped to Georgia Tech because of Buster Faulkner. Mm-hmm. So any new additions, or can we expect more from the O-line? Again, with the wide receiver thing, same question. Are they done with the O-line, or are we expecting more? I know we can fill up to 105 slots now due to rev share. It used to be 85.
Yeah. I think, the offensive line is kind of a tough one because it does seem like they were aggressive, but not necessarily for the proven production for the big name. Harrison Moore is a great addition. He has a lot of production at Georgia Tech, rising sophomore, and played a lot there. The other guys, there's more projection than production, I would say. The two Penn State guys, obviously, Phil Troutwine has a lot of connections with them. He understands them. So, I wouldn't say they're done. I think they're, for the most part, done. There's rumors out there right now. I think Pete Thamel might have reported it already, or Pete Nakos, one of the two. I always get them mixed up because they got this. But yeah, one reported that Florida's a team to watch for Jordan Seaton. As we know, and as we've seen on Twitter by one of our boosters again.
I saw how
posted yesterday. I think. Yeah, he's gonna cost a pretty penny, and I don't know if Florida's gonna really go all out for him. Because at the end of the day, you have a lot of returning talent on the line. You brought in a couple guys already at the line, but Phil's been recruiting his butt off. He's been a really great addition, and that would be a really fun one. I think Florida fans would be over the moon if we picked up Jordan Seaton. I think Lying season would go to a new level. I think we might be getting too many, national title bets coming in from Florida fans, but that would be a huge one. Obviously, we'll have to see with that. I don't really think Florida's going to pony up for him in the spot that they are right now, but I think that they've done well on the O-line. I think that's one of my bigger question marks coming in, just because you watch Miami. As much as we hate to see Miami in a chip, you watch Miami. They built from the trenches, and you kind of expected that from Florida. Out. Yeah, and I wouldn't say Florida's done over the moon, additions. I think they're all really, really solid players that have high potential, but I wouldn't say anyone makes me feel like, yeah, this O-line is going to be one of the best in the country next year. So we'll see there. I think, again, I think for most of these positions, Florida's at a spot now where, all these other additions will just be add-ons. It won't be like, oh, we really need a guy right now, we have to go out and get a guy. I think Kanye Clark was the last pickup where it was kind of like, we need a guy at this position. I don't think Kanye Clark is that superstar addition either. I think he has a lot of potential, but I feel like the star position was the last group where you really needed a body out of the portal. Now it's all just, is there a couple other guys that Florida might be able to, it's in their ballpark money wise. They feel like they could get it done, and they feel like he could help our team. So, I think the O-line, they've added a lot of potential players. I think I'm excited to see it in camp. I'm excited to, see it when the games start. But I wouldn't be saying on here, oh, there's a guarantee going to add another guy, but they might be in the market still. We'll see.
I agree with you. I'm not stunned by the pickups on the O-line, but I'm the type of Trout won a couple national championships while as a player at UF. So I'm the type of in Trout I trust, and I think he can develop these kids correctly to be NFL starters. So I don't think we need that big name, splash name on the O-line, at least from my standpoint. If we get the guy that just came out, that's fine. But again, is there like a cap to the rev share? Because he would cost a pretty penny. And if there is a cap or limit that they need legally to meet, then you have to cut somebody to probably get him to wear orange and blue.
Yeah, I agree with both things you're saying. I think first off, I trust Phil to bring in these guys that, he can work with. Obviously, the two guys from Penn State, he knows firsthand. He's been working with them for a while. So I know they're pretty high on the Boyer kid. I believe his last name is Boyer.
Yes.
Very high on him. And Harrison Moore's had experience. Even the Stanford kid, a lot of people didn't like that pickup. But this kid was out of high school. Yeah, he was recruited by a lot of big-time schools. I know Texas A&M was in the mix. A lot of schools were in the mix. And he got playing time early on as a freshman in a bad offense. So, as much as you want to say, oh, his PFF grade is not good, you got to let Trout work, and we'll see what happens there. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see the O-line. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of returning pieces that people don't really talk about. I mean, Florida retained almost all, if not all, of the available returning O-line. Didn't see many go into the portal. I know Jason Zandamello has been someone that people have been high on for a while, might fill in for the center spot. He's one to watch. And obviously, you got guys like Roger Kearney coming back. You got guys like Caden Jones. So I'm excited for the O-line group. And then, as you mentioned, you go out and get a guy like Jordan Seaton. You're spending a lot of money. And listen, I don't buy into the rev share nonsense too much, because I don't think anyone's really following that right now. And there's no rules, stopping them, because it's the Wild West out here right now. So I think if you bring in Jordan Seaton, there's going to be some money things. You might see a guy hit the transfer portal, which would be unfortunate for that player, because we're coming to a close here, But I think it's all worth it in the end. I mean, Jordan Seaton is going to be a first-round pick, most likely. He is well worth the money. So if Florida does go that route, I'd be, above the roof. I would be flying, but we'll see what happens there.
In terms of also Gator Nation, you got to take into account there's a lot of freshmen already on campus. I say freshmen because they just arrived to campus. Like Tyler Chacum, he made it to campus. There's several others that made it to campus that I can't recall their names. Obviously, I've been trying to get Tyler on the show, but I'm getting snubbed right now. His mom and him follow me, but they're not replying. So that's the weirdest thing. In terms of the DB room, are we done with the DB room?
Yeah, I would say unless someone pops that Florida really feels like they can attack, I would say for the most part, we're done there. I think Kanye Clark was the last addition. That room lost a lot of starting talent.
Yes. Yes.
Obviously, Sharif Denson and Aaron Gates were the big two.
Yes.
And you lose Devin Moore to the draft, so you need to replace them. But they also bring in a lot. Return a lot of talent. I think Dijon Johnson is being underrated right now by the fan
Yes.
base. I think
Yep.
the big thing is Devin Moore was cornerback 1. He was really good. When Dijon Johnson played, man, he was up there with Devin Moore. He was balling out. Cormani McClain obviously is a guy that last year got a lot of playing time, had his ons and off. There was times where he was getting burnt in coverage, but there was times where he looked like a first round pick. He's got all the measurables, he's got all the pedigree. So I think Florida, obviously, not to get into Javari Flowers, who I thought was phenomenal last year. I thought Javari Flowers was
100%.
one of the biggest surprises on this team. He was really good. So I think Florida's cornerback room and DB room in general, they have a lot of returning pieces that are exciting. Obviously, Bryce Thornton is going to be the captain of the defense somewhat at safety. And then you bring in Cam Dooley, you bring in DJ Coleman. Those are two big additions that really make this room really good. And, so I think that right there, that foundation is really good. You got Lagonza Hayward. He'll probably get a lot of playing time this year. I think he's the candidate to play in that star position, but you bring in Kanye Clark. You needed kind of bodies at the star, and Kanye Clark played a lot last year, and he played well. I wouldn't say he's this splash pickup. I wouldn't say he had like a phenomenal year, but he played well. Not a lot of people know about him. He was a walk-on at UCLA, had 13 offers from lower tier schools that, you don't really want to go play at as a D1 talent. And he walked on at UCLA, and he was a starter last year after a brutal injury the year before. So he earned playing time really quick for a walk-on, really impressive. Obviously, he earned a scholarship there. But I think he could be a sneaky good ad. And in general, this group has a lot of potential, and they have a lot of proven production. Cam Dooley and DJ Coleman are big-time ads. And then you have Bryce Thornton. You have Dijon, who's been a starter for a while. You have Cormani. So I'm excited about that room. Obviously, if someone, you saw it with Jontez Williams, I believe, the kid that
Jontez Williams, yes.
Yeah, he committed to not UCLA, USC.
USC.
They'll go after kids, that are big-time kids if they think they can land them. Obviously, he had connections to the university, and then we looked like we were leading that, and obviously the bag got dropped a little bit. But I think if someone hits the portal that Florida, identifies as someone they can go out and get, and that could start in this group or, be a big-time contributor, they'll go after him. But as of now, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the group that they rock into spring camp.
Are we done with I know these are repetitive questions, but I'm trying to get a breakdown from each room. Are we done with the edge room defensive line? We got a bunch of kids coming in as freshmen also.
Yeah, that room I think is the one that I'm most wondering if they're done with. Just because, I think Jordan Norman, the kid that just committed to Tennessee maybe a day ago from Tulane, was a big time. That was kind of their first whiff as a staff, in my opinion. Obviously, John.
I was in shock he went to Tennessee.
Exactly. It felt like he was coming to Florida. It felt like they really wanted him here off the edge. He goes to Tennessee. That's kind of surprising to me. But I think, again, you're giving me repetitive questions. I'm giving you repetitive answers, and I don't mean to. But,
I think we got to break it down for these people.
Right, exactly.
You and I do research all the time. People out there on YouTube land don't do the research. So
yeah, I
go ahead and answer the question the way we know what we have.
Right. So I think there's, if someone is in the portal or enters the portal that Florida sees, as a big time addition, they might go after him. But as it stands now, I wouldn't be surprised again if this is the group. I think you add, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but the Emmanuel kid from Jack State.
Or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I'll learn it in the season. Don't worry. But he's a fantastic football player.
We'll be talking
high
in
potential.
The season too, so.
Yeah, hopefully. But high potential guy. I think he slides into the interior defensive line, even though he played edge at Jack State. He just has
Yeah.
the build for it, and he'll be a phenomenal player. And then on the edge, obviously, you retain Jaden Woods, which was the biggest part of this offseason, maybe, was the biggest retention. You have LJ coming back. You have Cameron James coming back. You have even guys like Kofi Asar coming back, Jalen Wiggins. So I think there's a lot of potential there again, and there's a lot of production. Jaden Woods is a guy that you feel extremely comfortable starting. I think, no, he's a stud. No one will deny that. And then on the other side, LJ was probably going to play a lot more this season and maybe be that
Yep.
starter.
Yep.
Obviously they had a lot of vets in that room, but he was going to play a lot until the injury. He was a 5-star guy. He has a lot of potential. I think, they're out of camp. There was a lot of high talk about him, high praise. So I think they're comfortable with him. Cameron James obviously is a really good football player. There's a couple others that I'm probably missing, but they got a lot of good names in that group. Obviously in the interior, Brendan Bett coming back. I know he made a bad first impression with a lot of people with the spitting incident, but good football player, Brendan Bett
Good
is.
football player.
You got Joseph McLeod coming back. He was a true freshman that made some plays. You got Joseph Mbachu coming back. There's a lot of really good football players in that interior D-line coming back, and you added, the Jack State kid. You added a couple kids on the D-line in general. So I'm really excited about that group. I think if there was another player that was out there or comes in the next few days, even though the portal's kind of closing, they'll definitely attack it. I think Jordan Norman was probably a starting caliber name, and that's why they were attacking him. He had great production at Tulane. But at the end of the day, I feel like this staff is comfortable with what they have, and you got to trust Gerald Chapman, who has been here, has worked with this group, has worked with a lot of the returning players. He seems to, understand what the talent is there. And I think Florida has enough talent where if they go into spring camp with this unit, they will be very confident. And, if there's a guy that is kind of a luxury ad, they'll definitely go out there and do it. But, I think they're pretty comfortable right now.
One of the rooms that worries me, and I might be overlooking because they might still be trying to get people, is the tight end room.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned
How is that looking?
I think they're going after another tight end. I think that's the room where I could definitively say they'll add another player before the portal's over. Tony Livingston leaving was kind of tough because I think as much as, some people don't have the greatest.
Did that come out of the blue?
Yeah, it was a little out of the blue. I think, you expect that with the things like when you bring back Amir Jackson, you put a lot of effort to bring back Amir Jackson.
That is true.
You bring in the Georgia Tech tight end, Luke Carping, who played a lot for a young guy, and was a big time recruit. And you're obviously going out there and recruiting a lot of tight ends. They've been aggressive in the tight end market. So I get it with Tony Livingston. As much as people might remember him for, a drop he had here and there, he was kind of the experience in the tight end group that made me feel comfortable. Now that he's gone, I think they're gonna go after a guy. It's just tough because right now there's not a lot of quality tight ends left in the portal.
Well, the guy I wanted, he's already gone, and that was the guy from New Mexico State.
Yeah, he was a big one. I think there was kind of behind the scenes stuff going on there. He didn't visit Florida. I think he kind of realized I'm not gonna be the number one guy. And I think Florida's very high on Amir Jackson. There was a reason they went above and beyond to get him back from the portal. I think he might just be the starter this year. I think they're very high on him. And then Luke Harpring, who was, I think Amir Jackson was the 8th rated tight end in his recruiting class, and Luke Harpring was 9th, or it was something. They were back to back, very highly touted recruits. Harpring played a lot last year for Georgia Tech under Buster Faulkner. So, I think they're comfortable with those two. And then I think you're going to see an addition that's, at this point in the portal, there's not a lot left unless someone enters out of the blue, kind of like Jordan Seaman last night. But I think you add someone with potential who you can throw in there, at times. But I really do think that it's Amir Jackson, it's Luke Harpring, and then maybe, I mean, people forget about Micah Jones. Micah Jones was a 3-star flip from Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin. He was a big time recruit. He's kind of been under the radar for a little bit. So Florida still has talent in that room. They definitely need to add one more, and I think they would probably like to add more of a experienced veteran, but I don't think there's much left. So that room is a question mark, but I think there's still talent there. And, it all depends on if Amir can truly reach his potential and break out like we expect him to, and if Luke Harpring can build on last year and, kind of surprise some people in a way.
One question I have is the running back room, because we picked up two very similar backs back to back, which kind of caught me off guard. What's the point of getting two scat backs? In my opinion, are they going to get enough playing time? Because they're both very similar. The guy from ECU and the guy from Cincinnati.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're necessarily too similar. I think, the guy from Cincinnati is definitely that big play, scat back type of guy like you mentioned. He's a big play threat. He can affect the game in the passing game. I think London Montgomery's kind of more downhill than him. I think he's kind of more of a bruiser in a way. He's still got that big play ability and stuff like that. I think all three of these running backs, obviously Jaden Ball, but Evan Pryor and London Montgomery, all of them are going to get a lot of carries. If you paid attention to Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, which I want to come on record and say I don't think it's going to be the exact same offense.
I doubt
King,
it.
I think they had to Haynes King kind of handcuffed them, and I think Haynes King was a great quarterback, great college quarterback, but he did handcuff them a little bit in the scheme, and they kind of had to be super run heavy. But at Georgia Tech, all three running backs were getting a lot of carries. They were used a lot, and I think Florida's running back room is fantastic now. I mean, you have the two guys you just mentioned, Evan Pryor and London Montgomery, to add to, Jaden Ball, who's one of the best running backs in the entire country. And then you have guys like Duke Clark. You have guys like Byron Lewis, who are really high potential running backs. Duke Clark showed a lot when he played.
Yeah.
So that running back room is probably one of the best in the country. I don't think that's crazy to say. I'm super high on Evan Pryor just because I think that Jaden Ball and Evan Pryor are the perfect duo. I think Evan Pryor, I mean, just you have Jaden Ball in the backfield for a majority of the game, and then defensive have to handle the speed of Evan Pryor and the big play ability. That's just crazy to me. I think that's a perfect duo. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about that room. They're definitely done in that room. I think I could say it feels like they have one or two names over what they really needed in that room, but that's always a good problem to have. So I'm excited. I don't think it was necessarily, a problem to bring those two guys in. I think I kind of was shocked that London Montgomery was okay with coming here when you already saw that Evan Pryor and Jaden Ball were here. But I think that just
shocked
goes.
Me.
I think that goes to show you the plan that they have for London Montgomery and Evan Pryor and Jaden Ball. This staff, this offensive staff specifically, we're really high on. So I trust them. And I think London Montgomery trusted them too. And I think that's why, that room is really exciting. And I think they have a great plan for it. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. And I think it's one of the best rooms in the country.
Hypothetical question that wasn't on the questions here. Can we see VB3 and Pryor returning kicks?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be interesting to see the return game because there's a lot of question marks. I mean, for one, do you want, last year VB3 was so explosive in the return game and he was a huge factor back there. But you kind of got to decide, do you want your wide receiver 2, the guy who is a guaranteed starter this year? You're putting a lot of eggs in him to be a great playmaker for you on offense. You want him back there taking the extra hits, getting the extra effort out there where he might not be as explosive on offense. And do you take that risk because he's such a playmaker back there? A lot of times you see teams kind of not put a starter out there or not put a guy that's playing the majority of the snaps on offense back there just so you're not, putting your guy through too much wear and tear. So I think it'll be interesting. I think Evan Pryor could definitely get return kicks. London Montgomery could definitely return kicks. He showed it, last year. He's a really good returner. Even a guy like Javari Flowers, out of high school, I kind of expected him to be a return specialist. He was an incredible returner in high school.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens there. But I think Florida has a lot of options, and it really comes down to, would you rather a guy like Evan Pryor and London Montgomery, who aren't going to be playing as much and aren't going to be taking as many hits, or do you want a guy like VB3 who could change the game at any moment, but you're kind of, you're kind of taking him away on offense at times where he's going to be tired or he's going to take the extra hit, and you don't really want that.
Gator Nation, you're gonna hate me for this, but I don't like making comparisons. But Pryor reminds me, in the kickoff return game, I mean, of a national champion himself, Brandon James, number 25.
High expectations, but he's a burner, man. I'm excited to see Evan
So I
Pryor.
mean, that's why I mentioned Pryor in the kickoff game.
Yeah, I think there'll be some big plays from him this year.
In terms of the quarterback room, is going into spring AP the number one and JT the number TJ the number two?
Yeah, I think it's going to be truly an open competition. I think everyone kind of understands that it's going to be a competition. That being said, I consider Aaron Philo the current leader, heading into it. I think Tramel Jones has a plenty of chance to change that, and I think Tramel Jones is a great quarterback. And
I've been harping for him to be number one for a long time.
You've been on the Tramel Jones train for a while. I still think he needs a little bit of more time. He was a true freshman last year. We saw him in one game. He got developed by a quarterback staff that, looking back on it, a lot of people are questioning, did they harp on DJ Lagway's development in some ways? So I think he still needs a little bit of time to really develop. And Aaron Philo, what a lot of people don't get it is people love to say, oh, he's never started, he has no experience. Oh, he was a backup quarterback at Georgia Tech. For one, he was backing up Haynes King, who got Heisman votes. The veteran guy who was the leader of that team. I think if he was named the starter over Haynes King, that team would have revolted. That would have been a bad chemistry move. So, as much as I'm not saying that Aaron Philo was a better quarterback than him, but Aaron Philo's at the age now where you expect a guy to start. I know college football has changed. We saw DJ Lagway as a true freshman starting for us. You see true freshmen starting all the time. But in the old days, this was when you expected a quarterback to start, when they had years in the system, when they kind of were built. And Aaron Philo wasn't a 5-star guy. He was a 3-star guy who, quite frankly, dominated high school football, but not at the level where everyone would say, oh, this guy's ready to go. So I think this is his time to really step up and say, all right, I've developed in Buster Faulkner's system. I'm the type of quarterback you need. And I think we see that. I think he has a lot of potential. If you've watched the clips, I think he's put a lot on tape in his short time playing that you can be excited for. And you got to be excited that he spent now probably 2 or 3 years under Buster Faulkner, learning his system, becoming the college football player that he had all the potential to be. And now he's stepping out on the field. Now's his opportunity. So I think Aaron Philo is the early leader. I think Tramel Jones could change that. I think Tramel Jones is a great football player and high potential guy. But as of now, if I had to bet on who was quarterback one, coming into game one, I think it's Aaron Philo. And I think Aaron Philo has the potential to be a really good quarterback this year for the Florida Gators.
They're going back to the receiver room and specifically VB3. Is VB3 going to be more on the outside, because now we have another slot receiver. His name escapes me right now, but he came from Georgia Tech. Or is VB3 going to be playing on the outside and also playing slot? Or is number 7 replacing Eugene Wilson?
Yeah, I think as fans, a lot of the times we overthink that. The offense is not just, all right, Dallas Wilson, you go on the outside, Vernell Brown, you go on the outside, and Eric Singleton, you go in the slot, and then we're done for the year. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the times Vernell Brown's going to be on the outside for 2 plays, then he's going to go in the slot, and Eric Singleton's going to go on the outside. These guys both have, the good thing about Singleton and Vernell Brown is they both have the ability to play in the slot and to play on the outside and to excel at both. So I think they're going to be splitting time there. And I think, you got to remember that wide receiver is a heavily rotated position. You get a lot of wide receivers on the field. You got Bailey Stockton. He plays the slot at Georgia Tech.
That's what I was thinking about originally, not Eric, but I was thinking about Bailey.
Yeah, Bailey's best friends with Eric. Aaron Philo balled out with him in high school, has a great connection with him. You watch Aaron Philo's tape, most of those throws are going to Bailey Stockton in college. You could just tell they have a connection. So
Bailey's a burner, and he's a burner. He's more than a slot receiver. I've seen some video where the kid just takes off on people.
Yeah, so I really think no one is getting pigeonholed into the slot, specifically. I think we're going to see all these guys play on the outside, on the inside. And that's the good thing about Florida's wide receiver room is other than, maybe one or two guys, I really think anyone can play anywhere. I think, Micah Mays, you might say, oh, he's more of an outside guy. Dallas Wilson, you definitely say is more of an outside guy, but they can play the slot. The good thing about an outside receiver is they can play the slot and be pretty good at it. True. And the slot guys, Eric Singleton can definitely play the outside. So can VB3. Bailey Stockton can play the outside. TJ Abrams, that guy's a often forgotten name. And, he was a big retention at the time. And Florida added a lot of names over him, but I still think he's going to be a good player. He was getting playing time last year. So Florida's wide receiver room is really good. And I'm not worried about, one guy playing in the slot and one guy playing on the outside because Buster Faulkner is going to move these guys around. They're going to be matchup problems wherever they are on the field, and it's going to be really fun to watch.
I haven't followed this guy, but I wish he would come and wear the orange and blue. The receiver from Old Dominion. Whatever happened to him? Did he sign somewhere, or is he still in the portal?
Are you talking about Ja'Cory Thomas, maybe?
Yes.
Ja'Cory Thomas signed to Vandy. He went to Vanderbilt.
Oh, my God.
I wouldn't stress too much about the wide receiver room, Carlos. That wide receiver room is one of the best in the nation.
I know we're
already.
loaded, but one more wouldn't hurt.
Listen, I think, the one wide receiver that I was kind of hurt with because I felt if we added him, this wide receiver room was probably the best in the nation.
We're already loaded. We're loaded.
Yeah. I think Jamie French, that addition would have pushed me over the edge. I mean, that guy was one of the best receiving recruits in a class that had Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, all these guys.
I don't think Jamie wants to be a Gator because he's had 2 shots.
Yeah, I mean, there was times where I think if Florida got him to campus, it might have been different. But Michigan was offering stuff that Florida could not. That's not just on money wise. As we talk about, Florida has an insanely deep wide receiver room. I don't think Jamie French would have came here and started. I think he does start at Michigan. So there's a lot that goes into that. But I think Florida's wide receiver room is incredible right now. I think the big three of Dallas Wilson, VB3, and Eric Singleton is one of the best in the nation. I'm super excited for it. And I wouldn't stress too much about a wide receiver room. I think, we got enough.
Just a question, and then we'll go back to Gator stuff. Your thoughts on someone that I thought would never leave Utah, Ty Whittingham?
Yeah, that was a little crazy. I mean, I think, these coaching carousels are crazy. He stepped down and then wound up at Michigan pretty quickly. So crazy world we live in. I think this coaching carousel was probably one of the most fun to watch. I mean, just with the Lane Kiffin craziness, Kyle Whittington going to Michigan wasn't even maybe top 2 of what was going on in the coaching carousel. And that's a crazy situation on its own. So it's a crazy world we live in. I'm just happy, to have John Summerall here, who has probably handled it the best out of everyone so far. If you had to just say on who had the most graceful exit, who came in here and had the best start, I would give it to John Summerall. I think a lot of people might be a little too biased on that, but
the right way.
He did it the right way. Tulane fans will tell you that. The Tulane administration will tell you that. Most of these coaches did not do it the right way. other than him. So I think you got to give him credit for that at least.
I know it's a little bit early, and I know we're going to be talking during the summer because we have other shows planned. Um, but any early surprises that you can expect from the freshmen, especially the freshmen that came up early, graduated early from high school, and are already on campus. One kid I'd be watching, and I hope he comes on my channel eventually again. Tyler Chacon. I want you on my channel, and I want your mama on my channel. I've been trying to get you guys on here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talented recruits, and if you know me, a lot of the Gators on SI staff know this. I am the biggest fan in the world about Davion Gross. I'm the leader of that Davion Gross, fan page. I think he's going to be one of those 5-star freshmen. I mean, he was a high 4-star, I argue 5-star guy.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be one of those guys that steps on campus and just it is phenomenal. Now, Florida's wide receiver room is incredibly deep, so it's going to be tough for him, but I think he's one of the main parts in making it such a talented group. I think, you watch his film, it's insane. This year especially, he missed the first maybe 4 games due to injury, still ended the year with like 1,400 yards receiving. Something crazy, man. He's phenomenal. I don't want to put him up there with like a Vernell Brown III or Dallas Wilson because those guys are special, but he has a chance to be another freshman wide receiver that breaks out. So, when we look back at this on the end of the year, I want to be the first to be like, yeah, Davion Gross is going to be an impact guy. Other than that, I'm really excited for a lot of these guys. KJ Ford, I think, you come into an edge group that kind of needs a guy. We just talked about it. They might have been looking for another guy.
Yeah,
I think he could be that guy. I think he's a really talented player. Justin Williams and Marquez Daniels, the whole wide receiver room that they brought in, really high potential, really good. Justin Williams he is like the perfect Eugene Wilson replacement. And I'm not talking this year just because the wide receiver room is so deep and Justin Williams is just a true freshman. But, he reminds me a lot of Eugene Wilson. And I think he could be a really good player. And then Marquez Daniels is like 6'6", or maybe not 6'6", maybe 6'4", 6'5". Yeah. And he can scoot, man. You turn on the film, he's outrunning angles, crazy. He's a really good football player. So there's a ton of talent coming in. One of the ones I'm most excited to see in spring camp is Hezzy Kent, just because the guy's like 300 pounds and really wants to play tight end in college. So that would be one that is interesting to watch when spring camp starts. I think, we just talked about tight end. If he's a guy that can get that weight down a little bit or play with that weight, I think it would be fun to see a 300-pound tight end in college football. That would definitely be something to watch.
I wouldn't mind seeing HK at fullback once in a while.
Yeah, right. He could play. I mean, he runs the ball. In high school, they would give him the wildcat runs, and he would ball out. So I'm excited to see him. And I think this freshman, another way that John Summerall just absolutely has killed it so far is keeping this group together, because there's some real talent. And, that's not even talking about Will Griffin, who is kind of the gem of the leader of this class in the way that he's a solid quarterback, had a really good year. I don't think he'll necessarily be pushing for that QB1 spot this year like some people, are talking about.
Let him sit on the bench. Let him learn.
I think he'll learn and he'll become a really good football player for the Florida Gators. I know a kid that went to Tampa Jesuit. He kind of knows of Will Griffin. He told me he's going to be a really good football player. So
his little brother's really in 8th grade, and he's looking like him.
Yeah, right. That would be fun. So whole class is really good. If I had to, put my money on one guy, it's Davion Gross. He's going to be a really good football player. And I'm excited to watch.
Anything towards the 2027 class, because the only recruit we had, we lost, and I haven't seen anything yet from the 2027 class. I've mentioned potential players that and I've done videos on potential, but we don't have a recruit in 2027.
Yeah, I think, that's going to take time. Obviously, the 27 group, didn't really have a coach to recruit them. And John
Yeah,
Summerall stepped on campus, and it wasn't his top priority to be, oh, I got to go get these 27 kids. I got to go get these 26 kids. I got to go get this
exactly. No,
portal
I
class.
understand.
So I think we'll start seeing that pick up soon. I think, they've already had their junior day recently, and we've started to pick it up a little bit. A couple names that I'm just thinking of, obviously, Shenard Roberts, who said he would have committed to Florida
Yeah,
under
he
the
was
last
committed,
staff.
and then he flipped out.
Yeah, he's a good football player. Even the wide receiver that we had committed and left, I think his name was also Trinard or something. I can't remember his name.
They were
Trinard
very
Collins.
similar. I don't know if it was
Yeah,
the one. Yeah,
Tremont Collins or something. I will learn his name soon.
Tremont, I think
He's a really
Tremont.
good player. Yeah,
Yeah,
he decommitted, but there's always the chance to circle back. I think the fun one that we haven't heard too much about, but at one point Florida was surging with was Elijah Haven, the 5-star quarterback.
yeah, the 5-star
Obviously,
quarterback. Yep.
that connection was with Billy Napier more than anything, but I wouldn't hate to see that pick back up. I think he's a really good football player. I've been talking to a few 27 guys. Amari Patterson is a guy that was on campus recently, a wide receiver, kind of rated right now 3-star, 4-star guy, but he's a really good football player. And he speaks highly of the Florida Gators, so watch out for him. I think, like I said, that will slowly pick up in the next couple of weeks and heading into the season especially. But I think John Summerall has shown us that he can be a really good recruiter. We'll have to see with high school, but I have no lack of confidence in him after what I've seen so far at the University of Florida.
Guys, I'm going to do a quick plug before we go ahead and ask the next question. I've lined up an interview with the 2028 recruit QB. It's already confirmed for the summer. I'm also in the works with a 2027 defensive lineman out of West Palm Beach. I did a video on the West Palm Beach kid. He liked the video. If you follow my channel, you'll figure out who he is, but I'm not going to say his name. And he does respond to a lot of my tweets. So it's in the works. Trying to get more interviews.
Stay tuned.
In terms of the receiver room, would you say we have 5 number ones? Or 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D?
5
and
number
1F?
ones. I wouldn't go that far. I would say we have 3 number ones right now currently. I think and these
I
guys,
added David Gross. That's why I said 5.
I like Davion Gross a lot. I think Davion Gross is, I struggle. I was actually recently kind of working on a potential depth chart for the Florida Gators heading into spring. And that wide receiver room's tough because you have Dallas Wilson, VB3, and Eric Singleton. Those are going to be your 3 guys that are phenomenal football players, wide receiver ones at the position. I think all of them would be a wide receiver 1 at a different school. Dallas Wilson especially. I think Dallas Wilson is slept on, and people already think he's super talented. I think Dallas Wilson, if he didn't get hurt last year and if he was used a little differently, obviously we had questions about how our offense was used. He was on his way to, I don't want to put him up there with Jeremiah Smith just because obviously that's high expectations, but
Yeah.
he was one of those freshman wide receivers that it was like, wow, like this guy is good. Like a guy like Cam Coleman, who was just the most sought after transfer in the portal. Everyone, he hasn't had the numbers that like flash for you, but everyone knows he's one of the best wide receivers in the country. I think Dallas Wilson has that potential. I think this year, if he can stay healthy, we see one of the best wide receivers in the country in Dallas Wilson. And then, you go deeper. I think, like I said, Davion Gross, I really hope that he can solidify himself as that wide receiver 4. I think we kind of see him break out towards the end of the year more than at the start, just because there's so much depth there. But I think he could be, next year we could be looking at him like a wide receiver 1 for the Florida Gators. Micah Mays, production-wise, only 500 yards at Wake Forest. A wide receiver 4 there. He wasn't their top guy, but he can bring a lot to an offense. I think some people kind of look down on that addition because he wasn't the wide receiver, that you could say, oh, this guy could be a starter. But he's not coming in to be a starter. He's coming in to
No,
be,
I know.
a guy that steps in and makes a huge play here and there. I think he'll have a big role in this offense, but he's not, a wide receiver one. Bailey Stockton's a guy who's going to have a role. TJ Abrams going to have a role. Even Justin Williams and Marquez Daniel, I think can build out a role. I think
Yep.
those two we might see more of, this year being a redshirt year for them just because of how much depth we have. But this wide receiver room is awesome. I think the top three are three of the best in the country. And then, Davion Gross, I think, could make this room the best in the country if he hits, like I think he will. And then you have, the guys that I was talking about recently, all of those guys can play really important roles. So I'm super excited to see this wide receiver room, especially with a talented OC like Buster Faulkner.
Your thoughts on the two legacy kids that we recently, one of them transferred in from the transfer portal, and the other one is the younger brother of VV3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't, I think it's awesome that they're here. I think that's a great thing, is keeping legacies at the University of Florida. We'll see how much they really have a role here. I think VB3's brother, he's a freshman. I think he'll probably redshirt this year. And
And
we'll
the
see
other one came from the other one that's a legacy kid came from the school that we ate, UCF.
Yeah, UCF, and he didn't play too much at UCF, but he did play in special teams. So he's one to watch for a special teams role, and we'll see if he maybe takes a step in the near future. I think at the end of the day, it's just awesome to have legacies here. John Summerall, he really hit on that. I think he gets it in a lot of ways, but he hit on that in his press conference. He said, listen, if you were a Florida Gator, we want you back here. We want you to come home. And, having their kids here is just, it's something that's always going to be special to them and to the university. So it's an awesome thing. And, I think as much as it's hard to say, oh, these kids are going to make a huge impact here at the University of Florida, I think there's always a chance, and it's still just a great thing to have them on the roster.
All right, guys. Final thoughts from Dylan, and then final thoughts from myself. Don't forget to follow Dylan at Dylan Olive _UF. Follow his work on Gators SI. Follow his worker Cam Parker. Follow Tyler Carmona. Follow Kyle. Follow all of them on Gators SI. We will come back. I'm not going to do another transfer portal because there's only 3 more days left. I don't expect big names to. The only thing if for some reason we get the one that just popped out, I will get Tyler back on the show to get his thoughts. But someone's going to leave if we get that kid because he's going to break the bank.
Yeah.
Your final thoughts, Dylan, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
I appreciate you. It was good to be back. My final thoughts are just, I think Florida fans.
Your grades on the transfer portal. Do you have a grade yet or no?
Oh, my grade. I would give Florida an A-. As much as I would say an A, I don't want to be too over the top, but I think they retained with retention. Retention was an A+. They brought back almost everyone that you would really want back. Obviously, a guy like DJ Lagway and Eugene Wilson hurt to see go, but you brought back so much talent. So retention's an A. I think addition-wise, you get maybe a B+, A-, just because there was a lot of really good names in there. I wouldn't say it was any one of the best portal classes, but it was a really good class. Eric Singleton's an A+ addition, probably the most impressive addition. And then you got, Aaron Philo has the chance to be a really good under the radar addition. If he reaches the potential that we believe he has for the price tag that we got him at in this quarterback market, that would be really exciting. So I think I go with A-, and my final thoughts are just, Florida fans should be really excited. I know, when John Summerall was the choice for the Florida Gators, a lot of people were mad. A lot of people, kind of looked at him as, oh, this is Billy Napier 2.0. And, I get all of that because it was hard to look at him as, when Lane Kiffin was being pumped to you, it's hard to be like, oh, never mind, we got the second option, right? Or so it seemed. But I think so far on campus, he's given you every reason to forget all that doubt so far and kind of be all in on him. The portal was amazing. The retention was amazing. I think he says all the right things, and it's not in a way that it's like, oh, he says them, but I don't know if he really believes them. This guy, he will tell you the truth every second of the day. It's almost too much truth. Like at times you're like, oh, John, don't go that far into it. Don't go tell us about how you're gonna beat DJ Lagway next year because you did it to Darian Mensah. His truth and truthfulness and all that is really refreshing and exciting. And I think Florida fans should be super excited. And just wait for spring ball. I think spring ball is going to be really fun. I'm buzzing to get in there and cover that for you guys, get some video out there. I'll be, locked in. You can guarantee that if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be getting the best spring ball content. So I'm really excited for what John Summerall's done. And I think a lot of the times we say, oh, don't get too excited, but let's have some fun, man. Right now, John Summerall has done nothing to show that he's not going to succeed here. So I think he should have all the support, and we'll be excited for this upcoming year.
Gator Nation, remember, who's in the national championship? Indiana. Where did their coach come from? The group of 5. And his own staff came from the group of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So just because Billy Napier didn't work out at Florida doesn't mean Coach Summerall is not going to work out in Florida. And I already made the comparison one time when Dylan was on the Swampcast show. I'll make the comparison again. And I'm going to leave it out here. It can come back and bite me in the ass. John Summerall reminds me of Urban Meyer. I'll leave it at that. We'll be back as soon as we have enough other information. Trust me, and season 2 of the Swampcast show starts in August. But he'll be back. Trust me, I'm well connected with Dylan and everybody at Gators SI. And like I said, I have 2 interviews lined up for the summer. Dylan, if you want to hop in for the interviews, let me know. I'll let you know when they're scheduled.
That would be awesome.
You can hop in. And I'm going to try to get more interviews because that's what I'm trying to do, connect with the players that might end up being Gators in the future. And also, like I said, I'm trying to get Tyler, that he's already a Gator, but he's not answering my door. I keep knocking on the door, but he's not opening it. So, but I've got 2 so far. So we'll see if I can get more for the summer. I'm at least trying to get 5 for the summer. We'll see what happens. Like always, guys, I appreciate the support. Thank you for supporting the Swampcast show. Thank you for supporting the Rolling with Carlos channel. And like always, stay positive, stay on your grind, and go Gators. Peace.